Max, a Yorktown Christmas time travel novella, written by Izzy James, narrated by Hannah Laram. Chapter 1. Present-day Ballard House, Yorktown, Virginia. Olivia Woods inserted the huge blacksmith-wrought house key and stepped into Ballard House just in time to escape flurries of large wet snowflakes emitted from large granite cloud formations. A crack of lightning, followed by an explosion of thunder, brought her to the 18-light window facing the street. Well, that put the kibosh on practicing piano today. Her little car wasn't made to toboggan, and Yorktown didn't have snow equipment. The good news? The wet snow melted as it touched the street. She couldn't risk her ankle on a patch of ice. Another crack exploded directly overhead. She grabbed the window to steady herself. Fingertips matched to her fingertips. A hand took shape on the other side of the glass. A tingle began in her head and tendrilled through her body and extremities. A mere shade at first, he solidified before her eyes. A man. She pulled her hand back to her chest and stood mesmerized. Where had he come from? Her spirit called to heaven. Lord Jesus, protect me. Glowing blue-green eyes pierced her. Jaw-length dark hair framed his chiseled face. He wore the voluminous white shirt of a docent. In a flash, he moved towards the door. She ran in slow motion to reach the latch. He stopped on the other side of the old screen door. I have no wish to harm ye. She flipped the eye hook, inwardly rolling her eyes at the safety feature. You can see me. An Elizabethan accent shaped the words. Wonder filled his countenance. Why, are you a ghost or something? Eyes cast down to the slatted porch. No one has seen me in many years. Are you not a ghost? Or worse? A mist of questions filled her mind. He couldn't be an angel because he didn't tower over her and inspire great fear like she read of Gabriel. For the same reason, she didn't think he was a demon either. But they could be charming and deceptive. No, it was a plain old ordinary fear of strangers making her heart beat like a bass drum. Well, I've never died, if that's your meaning. Clever response, but she wasn't fooled. Devil spirits couldn't die. Can you die? I always thought so. Certainly my ancestors have all died, but I might be a special case. A half-smile softened his chiseled features. Not only did he sound like Masterpiece Theater, he looked like her dream of a tragic 18th century hero, masculine, masterful. Snow frosted his dark hair. Sleeves blown from a hand-embroidered waistcoat, which hugged his form to black breeches buckled below the knee above white stockings. Silver buckles twinkled from his shoes. He didn't charm her, but he did interest her. What makes you so special? 'Tis a long tale, meant for a roaring fire on a winter night and a full tankard of ale. Olivia glanced beyond him to the road, still only wet with snow. Shocks of pale orange lightning lit the thunderous clouds. She looked down long enough to see her wristwatch. She couldn't decipher its face. Well, I'd best be going, so if you will move, please. She waved him off to the side and stepped onto the porch. Will ye come back? I don't know. Of course, she would come back. The Christmas Open Town was in 3 weeks, and she was stationed here to demonstrate and play the antique piano. Before you leave, may I know the name of the lady to whom I've been speaking? Oh, he was charming, all right. Positively swoony. I shall start, shall I? He cleared his throat and took a step back. May I introduce myself? Maxwell Ballard at your service. He bowed and extended his hand. She felt her mouth fall open. Maxwell Ballard of Ballard House? He placed his hand on his chest. Maxwell Ballard of Pearl Hall, Yorktown, Virginia Colony. It couldn't be. Maxwell Ballard had gone missing. Christmas 1769. You're missing. The blue-green eyes lit with mischief. He patted his chest with both hands, right here. And you are? She stuck out her hand. Olivia Woods. He stepped closer to take her hand. which was nearly twice the size of her own. "You're freezing," he added his other hand to encase the hand he still held. "Would you care to come inside, to warm yourself before embarking on your journey?" She shouldn't. She needed to consult someone who knew about these kind of things. Was there any such person? If he really was Max Ballard, it would solve a couple of centuries-old mystery. Not that any but real history nerds like herself would care about that. On the other hand, his knowledge of colonial Yorktown would be unprecedented. He would need to be protected. She wasn't sure exactly what from, but her sense of unease grew in a different direction. What if he wasn't here when she came back? "Only if you tell me where you've been." "I'll do better than that. I'll show ye." Her heart rolled a beat. He released her hand and gestured towards the side of the house. She shivered with curiosity. Grams would kill her if she found out Olivia had taken such a risk. But really, what choice did she have when a man appeared out of nowhere saying he was from 1769? And he did appear. Of that, she was certain. Olivia followed him, keeping a firm hand on her purse and music satchel. At the corner of the back of the house, he turned. "May I?" She placed her hand into his outstretched one. Together, they stepped over a threshold Olivia didn't see until she had 1 foot through. The room upended to the main house and looked much the same in architecture, except it looked fresh, as though it had been recently constructed. 18 light windows lined the walls. One wall hosted floor-to-ceiling bookcases filled with leather-bound volumes. In one corner sat a small grand piano. It reminded her of the first pianos invented by Cristofori. 54 ivory keys not yet yellowed by age. C, A, and E were missing, as though they had never been completed. A quill, inkpot, and paper littered its glossy mahogany surface. She resisted the urge to slide her hand over the keys and to pick up the papers covered in notes. What is this? Surely I have no need to instruct you on the pianoforte. I have watched ye play. Breath caught. She cast her eyes about for anything familiar. The landscape outside the windows no longer reflected the backyard she knew. Dependencies and latticed walk paths turned the grass field she had known into a small village. She stepped back to look at him. "I meant, where are we?" "More like when." What had she done? She backed away from him. Miss Olivia Wood's eyes grew wide and her delicate skin blanched. Instant regret for his cavalier remark dampened Max's joy of the last few moments. Not only did she see him, but he had touched her. He knew he should not get his hopes up, but it was the closest he had ever been to gaining his freedom. He wanted to grab her hand and run. He did not care where. He placed his hands in his waistcoat. "I apologize." She gazed up at him and started to shake. There was only one thing he could do. Hopefully it would work. "Come with me." He took her by the hand, a hand that was colder than when he had first held it. Max led her to the doorway, her uneven gait more pronounced as she stiffly followed. Once over the threshold, she glanced at the grounds. What is going on? The voice she summoned to command him earlier was back. He smiled. It worked. That was something. Reluctantly, he released her hand. "Perhaps we should enter the other way?" She spun on her foot and led the charge for the front entrance. Rather than the parlor on the left, she chose the dining room on the right for their talk. He took a seat across the polished table from Olivia, his back to the windows. She placed her parcels on the chair next to her. Color returned to her cheeks. Stormy light played across her countenance. "Are there any more of you here?" "I'm not a ghost." "Okay." She flattened her palms on the table in front of her. "What was that place?" "It's my conservatory." "This house doesn't have a conservatory." "It used to." She covered her face with her hands. "Let me start at the beginning." Dragging her hands down to cup her chin, she murmured, "Please." As often as I had thought about this moment, his thoughts swirled like the snow outside. Across from him, Miss Woods clasped her hands and relaxed them by turn. If her continued rapid movements were any indicator, her patience was a thin veneer. "As near as I can recall, it began on December the 24th in the year 1769. He could still see Rebecca Stiles standing erect in his conservatory, Her voice rang as she reproved him. He had smiled and sounded ominous tones on his pianoforte as righteous indignation and anger spurred her on. "Laugh if you will! You always were an arrogant fool!" Rebecca swung towards the door, then back again. The brocade of her mantua rustled about her ankles. The command of her voice charged the air. Fingers stilled, he could do nothing but watch and listen. Her right index finger pointed at him from her curled fist. "A curse be upon you, Maxwell Ballard! You shall be alone through the ages until such a time as you lose your cruelty, your arrogance, until you learn empathy for your fellow man. I don't care if it takes 250 years. The room crackled with unspent lightning strikes. When she closed the door, it happened. What happened? Olivia inclined over the table. I'm not certain. The first thing I noticed was that 3 of my keys were missing. What keys? Keys from my pianoforte. Her eyebrows drew into a scowl. That's odd. Then I noticed I could not enter the house. You're in here now. He nodded his agreement. I wasn't sure what was happening. I was furious. I could not enter my house. My servants could not hear me call them. What about your family? They had moved away. I was supposed to join them in Princess Anne for the Christmas holiday, but had begged off due to storm repairs. You've been in that room since 1769? After a while, I realized I could walk around the outside of the house. I could watch life unfold, but I could not participate. She raised her palm towards him. Hand on the glass? Her eyes held for his for a fraction of a moment, understanding in their depths. Boots scraped and stomped at the front door. A tall man dressed in green with a wide-brimmed hat poked his head into the dining room. The park's closing. Hey, Nate. Olivia collected her bags from the chair. Olivia? He glanced across from her and held out his hand. You must be new. Nate Lewis. Max took it. Max Ballard. Nate's normally smooth nod caught when Max mentioned his name, but he didn't stop. Nice to meet you. When the park closes early, we get our stuff and secure the premises as quickly as we can. No guests? Olivia looked at him with wide eyes. Nope, I got it. You sure? Yep. Nate turned on his heel and was gone. Where are you going to go? Back to my conservatory. Will you be all right? He raised a finger. One question before you leave. Sure. What year is it? She grinned. The year of our Lord 2019. Max's eyes rounded as he accepted the pronouncement. Will you be back? Can you leave? Not sure. You couldn't see me yesterday. He had watched her. A shiver shuddered her spine. She had so many questions, but Nate was right. She couldn't risk the weather. Not just because of her ankle. Grams would wonder what happened to her. She couldn't take him with her. Not until she had talked to Grams. He didn't appear to be evil, but evil sometimes comes in pretty packages. Slush spotted her car as Nate drove by in his SUV. I'll be back. Olivia locked the front door with a big key. However did you people walk around with these things? Max's eyes widened. Why would I walk around with a key to my own house? She hefted the thing to point at him as realization dawned. You didn't leave your house empty when you left. His eyes narrowed, drawing his heavy brows into one crooked line. Never mind. She dropped the key into her purse and pulled out her car keys. Is that a key? She nodded her head in agreement. I assume you still have a key to your house if you need it? I have everything I need. Okay, then. She gingerly made her way down the painted steps, holding tightly to the handrail. She should have brought her cane, but the last thing she wanted Max Ballard to see was Olivia Woods walking with a cane. It was bad enough to walk with a permanent limp at 29 years old. She raised her chin and headed towards her car over the icing brick walkway. Mortification hit when she left the icy bricks for snow-covered grass adjacent to her car. She slipped on a particularly slick patch next to her car. Olivia grabbed for purchase on the trunk lid and slammed her ankle into the back tire. She hit the ground on her thinly covered bottom. Her docent costume didn't require a full set of petticoat and layers. Wet snow soaked through the thin cotton skirt. Max reached her before she could recover. Miss Woods, are you all right? He knelt on one knee. With your permission. His warm hands engulfed her injured ankle before she could protest. Gentle fingers smoothed from heel to above her ankle, moved it from left to right. It was the most intimate caress she had ever felt. "I feel no new injury." Heat spread across her chest and reached her ears. Olivia placed her hands in his and pulled against his strong arms to stand on her good ankle. "Are you sure you do not require assistance?" Olivia took a half step back, testing her ankle. If she balanced on her left foot, she could stand. She dropped his hands. She'd best get home before she couldn't walk. "I'll be fine by tomorrow." She took a short step towards the driver's side door. Her ankle collapsed. Max caught her elbow. "Perhaps just to the seat?" She leaned into him. Together, they managed the 3 steps to her door. "Mr. Ballard, I think we've answered my question." He turned towards her, question in his eyes. "Look where you are." He glanced back towards the house and stilled, hand still supporting her elbow. "Maybe you can leave?" His face lit with a bright smile. "Shall we try?" "I'm afraid I really can't." He lowered his blue-greens to the ground. "Forgive me," he said when he looked up. "Of course, you must look after your injury." Chapter 2. Max reached the corner of the house before Olivia, driving with her left foot, pulled out into Nelson Street. She waited until she had made her left on Main Street and approached the Swan Tavern before she pulled over. What just happened? She ran her hands through her hair. Confusion, joy, exuberance, trepidation vied for precedence. Only her throbbing right ankle kept her from hopping out of the car and jumping up and down. What did it mean? She took a deep breath and picked up her phone. It was Friday. Pizza and a movie with Grams and Garrett. Olivia ordered the pizza. Texted Garrett to pick it up. A light snow speckled her windshield. Time to go home. Thanking God for the foresight of an extra cane in the back seat, Olivia stepped gingerly into the living room, heading for her favorite recliner. Across the room, Grams, dressed in a large purple cardigan sweater and skinny blue jeans, didn't take her eyes off her work on a circular knitting machine. "Hi, honey." A fine blue yarn ran steadily through the fingers of her left hand while her right hand cranked the machine. "I'll be right there. I watched a video and I think I finally got it right. No drop stitches. I just have 5 more rows." Yay! Gramps had been struggling with the machine since she got it 2 days ago. The needle stopped clicking. She spun around, holding a tube of sparkly blue yarn. "It's going to be a Christmas ball." She dropped the tube when she glanced up at Olivia. "What happened to you?" "Slipped in the snow. I'll be all right. I probably won't move much from my chair, though." "What do you think?" She held up the scrunchy blue ball. "Cute." "Before Garrett comes, I need to ask you a question." Gramps threaded a large-eyed needle with blue yarn. "What about?" Olivia got 2 sentences into her account of Max Ballard when Graham set aside her needle and the tube. "You didn't bring him here." At once serious, her big eyes owled by the lenses of her glasses. Olivia raised her hands, palms out. "No, of course not. I needed to talk with you first." "I'll get you some tea and something for that foot." Spiky silver hair sparkled in the light cast by the chandelier, glowing in the dining room behind her. Olivia rested her foot on the outstretched footrest of her recliner. If she stayed off it and kept it up, she'd be much better tomorrow. Thank God for Grams. Olivia didn't know what she'd have done without her since the accident that took both her parents and shattered her ankle. She knew Grams would be in the kitchen praying before offering her advice. Sure enough, Grams returned with a cup of steaming tea loaded with honey, a pair of non-steroidals perched on top of her leather-bound Bible. "You could touch him?" "Yes, we shook hands and he helped me when I fell." "Other people could see him?" "Yep, Nate stopped by and shook his hand." "There's only one thing left then. You have to ask him to confess Jesus as Lord. The spirits of Antichrist can't or won't do that." "Just how am I supposed to do that?" "Not that I didn't know you were going to say that. I'd come to the same conclusion." Embarrassment warmed her cheeks. How do I walk up to a gorgeous man from out of nowhere and ask him to confess Jesus? The same way you ask strangers what their favorite song is before you sing it with them and bring them back to reality for a little while. It's hardly the same. Helping my patients communicate through music is not anything like this. It seemed simple enough, but her patients needed her. Max? She wasn't sure Max needed anything. A knock sent Gramps to the door. "I bring pizza and beer." Garrett swooped into the room, pizza in one hand, 6-pack of root beer hanging from a finger. He pet Gramps on the cheek. "What movie are we watching tonight?" Her friend from high school had grafted into her family as her megachef brother when they had both landed at William and Mary. "I thought we had agreed on Narnia." Grandma searched the shelves for the DVD. Garrett retrieved paper plates. Grandma got a serving spatula. Olivia organized the remotes. It wasn't long before conversation ceased, and the click of Graham's circular knitter began in earnest. Garrett sat on the floor, cross-legged, leaning against the couch. If all of Narnia could be trapped in a curse, and Aslan could release it, wasn't the same true of Max? "Grams, who did the book on curses?" "Derek Prince. There's a video." Olivia pulled her phone from her pocket and thumbed the blank screen. Nothing. "Dead battery? It doesn't last a full 8 hours anymore. I'm going to have to get a new one." "Try this." Garrett reached deep into his cargo pocket, pulled out a gray credit card with a wire attached. "What?" "It's a solar panel. I made it for you. You can slide the credit card inside the holder you have on the back. It will give you a charge as long as there's sun." Olivia sat up straight. "This is great." "Why did you ask about curses?" She didn't want to lie, but she wasn't ready to share Max with anyone, not even a brother. "Because I have a question, and I think I read the answer in that book." "I thought that once we were cleansed from the curses, we were clean. Are you saying we get more as we go along?" Graham's machine silenced. "Fighting against curses isn't a one-time thing." "Remember him and his wife repeating the prayer of renewal?" Olivia chimed in. Garrett flopped back against the couch, a frustrated mood she had seen him in before. He stretched out his long, thin legs. "No. You need to rewatch it." Arms crossed, wheels spinning behind intelligent eyes. "You want to watch it now?" he challenged. Olivia shot across the room. Grandma nodded. "Okay." Olivia navigated to the internet video channel. Max paced the conservatory. 250 years. In truth, it did not feel like such a long time. Until today, he hadn't realized he had not been permitted to see beyond the glass. The view outside his windows hadn't changed from the day he had walked into his wretched conservatory and had been cursed by Rebecca Stiles. And it was so cold out there. He was cold. Gloriously shivering blue cold. He could have stayed outside forever, feeling the snow land on his hair, the wind ruffling the folds of his shirt. He grabbed his coat and hat from its peg and once more stepped through the threshold into a new world. He took long strides to stretch his cramped legs. The warehouses were gone. He could see straight to the river. No tall-masted ships waited in berthings. No stevedores beckoned to one another. No villagers scurried from shop to shop, hollering greetings as they went. Even the thunder had quieted. Snow drifted from the sky in a slow, steady pace. If it kept up, there would be inches by tomorrow. He walked down Pearl Street towards Maine. Tom Nelson would be well pleased his house survived the years. The garden had lost its glory, as though time had scraped the canvas clean down to the dirt. Shame it was empty. He wouldn't mind seeing how Tom's 11 children fared. Surely it wasn't too optimistic to find the same open friendship in Tom's descendants that he had known in Tom. Max's shop was gone. The curving path to the waterfront remained, though obscured by snow. He stopped before a wooden sign erected near the entrance of the Swan. He glanced around to find that several of the wooden signs graced the street. It showed drawings and told brief history of the building. A civil war? Had George III been removed by Parliament as the Tudors before him? Who had Virginia championed? The replica of the Swan that stood quiet and empty before him wasn't a bad rendition of his old haunt. Too bad it was just a replica. He could use a draft and something to eat. He inhaled deeply. He had told Miss Woods the truth. He had everything he needed. He wasn't hungry. He craved the fellowship of those old friends. Had Rebecca cursed them all? Was it possible he would soon encounter a bewildered Sam Rogers or a Jabez Jones stumbling out of their houses, much as Max had done? He scanned the street once more. Alone. alone without even rich wood-scented air. The aroma of supper at the Swans wafting down, mixing with 100 other smells, both sweet and earthy. His heart ached, chest hollow. What had he done? Familiar mixed with strange. A new building replaced the old courthouse across from the Swan, all brick, glass, and metal. He couldn't like its impersonal facade. Instead of horses, conveyances similar to the one Miss Woods utilized for her journey stood awaiting their owners. The street was cleaner, but absent the snuffles and shuffles of a village awake with life. He wasn't sure it was a good trade. He let his hands fall to his sides. He could do nothing. He raised his head to heaven, palms open at his sides. I bow my will to yours. Through swirling snow, he thought he saw an idol with hands raised. Had they come to this? He shook off his lethargy and moved quickly towards the thing. It had to be over 100 feet high. Awe hit his spirit. No wonder people bowed to idols. He stepped closer to read the words adorning the base. Independence? The colonies were independent? Pride swelled inside his chest. The winds of discontent had been blowing when he had last walked these streets. They had done it. He raised his face to the snow-covered heavens and laughed. They had done it. We are a free nation. He hurried around the base of the large statue, commissioned in 1781. He had much to learn about the time he had been away. He knelt and traced the names of the fallen with fingers growing stiff in the cold. If only he had been there to help, he would have. There was no sense indulging the thoughts of what he could not alter. More than he could fathom must have changed in the 250 years. He had spent the last chunk of years studying and reading the Bible. He still didn't understand why God would allow Rebecca's curse to keep him trapped for so very long. His footsteps were no longer visible in the accumulating snow. Light was fading, but he needed no map to find his next step. He headed down Main Street, then down Church Street towards the river. Grace Church. It was still here. He skirted the main walk and made his way over snow-covered grass. After dusting more than a few stones, he found it. John Ballard, 1745. And then next to his father, Elizabeth Ballard, 1789. Mama. Mama with her knitting, sitting by the fire in the evening. Mama singing a hymn as she worked in her kitchen. How had she fared the Christmas he had disappeared? He wiped the watery obstruction from his eyes. Would he be able to go back, or was he stuck here? How could he make amends to Adelaide from 250 years away? Chapter 3. Saturday morning, Olivia's ankle was sore, but still walkable. As long as she moved carefully, she should make it through the day and still be able to see Max at the end of it, assuming he was still there. She dressed in jeans and a soft rose-cabled sweater. Stiff boots lent stability to her ankle. She grabbed an extra bag to bring a few things for Max. He must have dozens of questions. He still thought Virginia was a colony. She retrieved from her shelves a short history of the United States and a rather heavy almanac of the War for Independence, a compact disc tour of the battlefield, her worn copy of the Ballard House by the National Park Service. What else? I have everything I need. The echo of his voice stopped her. He didn't need food or clothing. He wasn't sick. Enough. She had laid in the dark, wondering what to do about his clothes. She'd never seen a more attractive man, and she's seen many a docent decked out for service in Williamsburg and Yorktown. None of them compared the sight of Max dressed for every day in his 18th century garb. He wouldn't garner stares as long as he kept to Yorktown and Williamsburg. He might be asked an embarrassing question or two about the location of bathrooms. Other than that, he should be fine. But there was so much more for him to see. So many things she would like to show him. Those questions kept her up a solid chunk of the night and thrummed her nerves with anxious anticipation for the end of the day, assuming, of course, he was who he said he was and not some creep out to take advantage of her. The incident in the conservatory was evidence in his favor, but the world was a supernatural place, and that didn't include the possibility of faulty human senses. Plenty of things can cloud the senses and the brain, as her patients reminded her daily. She added a cane in her music. She might as well get in some practice if he wasn't there, but first she must see Mr. Johnson. He waited to see her every day. She wouldn't fail Mr. Johnson. Olivia moved quietly towards the door. Grandma never got up before 10, and she deserved every wink. In typical Virginia fashion, the remaining snow covered the grass as a thin crust. Slush rimmed the roads. The centers appeared clear and wet. "Good morning, Dr. Woods." Jane smiled as she pushed a stack of carts towards her. "Mrs. Johnson is waiting in Mr. Johnson's room for you." "I'll be right there." Olivia dropped the charts on her desk, picked up her guitar, and headed down the hall. "How are you today, Mr. Johnson?" He turned a shaky head towards the sound of her voice, and a little smile turned the corners of his mouth. Mrs. Johnson stood. "Not much change since yesterday. He looks forward to you coming." "Would you like to sing with me today, Mr. Johnson?" He inclined his head. Olivia sat on an armless chair, checked the tuning on her guitar, and strummed an open chord. "Amazing Grace?" Mrs. Johnson suggested. By the time Olivia and Mrs. Johnson sang all 5 verses, a light returned to Mr. Johnson. She had transitioned into "There is Power in the Blood" when Mr. Johnson started to sing along. Tears filled Mrs. Johnson's eyes every day when he began to sing. Olivia's nearly filled every day with Mrs. Johnson's, but today her mind took a different turn, towards the restlessness she had been feeling lately. Would there ever be a Mr. Johnson in her future? He had better come along as soon as they had time for children. She wasn't past it at 29, but she didn't want to have children so late that she never got to retire either. The roads were dry when she parked in front of the Ballard house. There was no sign of Max when she opened the door. She unlocked the door that should lead to his conservatory. She couldn't see it, but would it appear as it had the last time when she crossed the threshold? She stepped right out into the backyard as she had always done before. He was real, of that she was certain. It wasn't possible to share one's hallucinations with others. And if she was going to share one, it wouldn't be with a down-to-earth person like Nate. Maybe Max was out walking. If she had been cooped up for 250 years, you wouldn't catch her inside any more than absolutely necessary. Music. Concentrate on music. She went back to the parlor and arranged her music on the piano. The Christmas Opatown was open to a small group of rotating visitors. Olivia selected several pieces that were thought to be popular in the colonies and a couple from colonial composers. She also thought to play an incomplete piece by an unknown composer. Light and cheerful, it recalled long walks on a quiet beach. It was her favorite piece. It would be the first time she performed it in public. It ought to make a good transition piece as she waited for guests to gather. Olivia removed her coat and laid it on a nearby chair. The room was a bit chilly, but she wouldn't be here long. Her heart skipped a beat when she heard a bump in the next room. She moved slowly towards the sound while she glanced around for a weapon. She had no desire to encounter a rat or any other critter that might have sought shelter from the cold. Holding her cane in 2 hands, she stepped into the room. The wardrobe burst open and Max fell out. Olivia screamed. "Miss Woods!" She gripped the wall, heaving for breath. "You nearly scared me to death!" "I am so sorry, my dear Miss Woods." He bowed before her. "What were you doing in there?" "I didn't know who came in. I thought it wise not to be seen by too many people just yet." Olivia retreated to the parlor and dropped onto the bench. "Couldn't you have just gone back to your conservatory?" "It was blocked by an intruder, who I now know is ye." He grinned. A boyish twinkle lit his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat once more, but this time she was able to conceal its effects. "I have to ask you a question." He took a seat across from her. "You may ask me anything." Olivia felt her cheeks flush. "What is your relationship with Jesus Christ?" His brows wrinkled in a single line again. "Whatever do you mean?" "I mean, who do you say that he is?" "Why?" "Because I know you're not a ghost." "What else could I be but a man?" "You have to agree that a man trapped in time is not a common occurrence. I need to make sure you're not some type of devil spirit and there's only one way to do that. 1 John 4:2. He cleared his throat. "I believe that Jesus of Nazareth, the only Son of Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, came in the flesh and died for all mankind. He died for me." Relief uncoiled a worried spring deep in her heart. A smile spread from her heart to her face. "Is that all ye wish to ask me?" "For now, yes. I suspect you have a lot of questions for me." He inhaled deeply, looked down at his hands, then smiled at her. A real smile intended for friends. "I took a walk yesterday." She swallowed her questions and let him speak. So much he didn't know. So much he did. "I brought you these. It's a beginning." He peered into the bag. "What kind of process made these books?" He fingered the almanac. "Naught but paper and glue. Cheap to print and cover. I could sell these for a good profit." He glanced up. "What kind of paintings are these? I've not seen their like." "Oh boy, pictures." "It's a technology called photography. It was invented about, hold on, let me see." She pulled out her cell phone and conducted a quick search. "About 1839, if Wiki is to be believed." "What is that?" He pointed to her phone. "Many things. First, let's start with photography. Then we can get into the telephone." She opened up her camera. "Hold still." And there he was on her phone. She navigated to the picture. "Here you are." His puzzled look remained as he studied her phone. "Wait, this will probably make more sense." She retrieved her phone and took a selfie. "There I am." "I want one of those." "There's time." She raised her phone again and took a picture of them both. No one would ever believe she had actually met a man from the past. Now she had proof. "Shall we go for a walk? It's a pretty day out. I should like to ride in the contraption you rode off in yesterday." "Would you?" "Yes, indeed." "Where would you like to go?" "At this point, I hardly know. Last evening I walked all over Yorktown. My conservatory was still here when I returned." "Did you doubt it?" "I didn't expect Miss Styles' curse to have any effect. Now I'm still not sure what happens next." "Perhaps we should focus on what we need to do to break her curse." He nodded. "I confess that I have so many questions. Miss Styles and her curse have fallen by the wayside. I feel like a child at a party. So many new things to see, I stay distracted." "You may ask me anything." He grinned at her. "We are a free nation?" "Yes. Not just that, we are the most powerful nation on earth." "What are we called?" "The United States of America. There are 50 states now." His eyes widened along with a smile. "What happened to England?" "Still there, allies, just not as powerful." "The king?" "Queen Elizabeth II. "Are you married?" Olivia started. "No. Are you?" "No." "What did you do to cause Miss Styles to curse you?" He studied his hands. "I'd rather not say." "It may be a clue to your freedom." "May I ask you why you limp?" "You're changing the subject." "Yes. My parents and I were in a car accident. They died and my ankle was crushed. The doctors had done what they can, but I'll likely always walk with a limp. Truth is, I'd have given both my ankles if it meant they could have lived." His eyes softened as he took her hand in his. He didn't say the words, but she felt them reach into her soul to form a kinship. "You said you wanted to go for a ride. I know just the place to take you. But first, we need to find a store." "I'm not so sure I should ride in one of those things." "We'll be fine." She picked up her music. He reached her coat before she turned to retrieve it. He held it up for her. Heat raced up her neck. "Thank you." "Miss Woods, may I say you look lovely today. Your tailor-made clothes suit you." Once again, her cheeks bloomed. "I don't have a tailor." She spun to face him. "Wait, what was wrong with my costume?" "Nothing if you wish everyone to think you're an ill-fed orphan." He flashed her that little dangerous grin. "I just meant to say that you look much better in clothes that fit you." She didn't know if she should be flattered or censored. Surely docent costumes weren't the height of fashion, but she thought she'd done a pretty good job of replicating the time. "I hope to find a tailor in this time that does a fine job as you look today, although I do have one question." Eyebrows up. "Yes?" "Are you sure ye are quite comfortable in so revealing an ensemble? I don't believe I've ever known a woman to wear breeches in public." Laughter bubbled to the surface. "I suppose I should be pleased you weren't calling into question my virtue. While clothes do indicate a state of modesty, I'm not sure I ever thought they were any indicator of virtue." The boyish grin reappeared. "Do you have a coat?" He nodded. She followed him down the hallway. The instant he stepped across the threshold, his conservatory became visible. She arrived at the door as he pulled his coat and tri-corner hat from pegs on the far wall. The windows still reflected the dependencies. No one traveled the worn footpaths. "May I come in?" "Please," he waved his arm. "Is this a Christoffery?" "No, a Longman." "These are the keys that disappeared that night?" She lightly touched the wooden surface of the 3 missing keys. "Yes." Olivia slipped towards the door before Max could reach it. She didn't want to be caught in this room without him to get her out. Chapter 6. Graham stared into the fire in her voluminous plaid flannel nightgown. "How was the party?" Olivia asked. "Not much of one. Shepard was the only one who showed up besides me." Olivia removed her coat and slumped into the opposite chair. "Did you have a nice time?" "Nah, Shepard and I were never really close. She made her excuses and I made mine and I came home." "I'm sorry, Grams." Grams glanced up from the fire. "It's okay. Attendance has been dwindling the past year, and I think we're all worried about retirement. What we would do, would we have any friends?" "Retirement is claiming them?" Graham's eyes slipped back to the fire. "Yep, they found their way." "You'll be sorry to see it end." "Yes, I will, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't." "Did you eat?" "I did. There's some cheesecake in the kitchen if you'd like a piece." "That's something I'd miss." "Why would you miss it?" Olivia turned her back to Graham's all-seeing eyes and made for the closet. "On the way home, I was thinking about Max and how different things are for him here. And that led to thinking about how different it would be for me if I went to his time." "Be careful." Grams made her way to the kitchen. Olivia went the other way around. "What?" A silly giggle bubbled out in spite of her attempts at control. Grams swung around quickly to face her. "He's cursed." Olivia felt the smile drop from her face. "I know that. I think it's only natural to think about it. I mean, who gets to meet someone who's traveled through time? Nobody. That's who. Except us." "Yes. And that means we have a responsibility to help him break the curse and get him back to his own time." "What if God allows him to stay here?" "What if he doesn't?" Grams wasn't asking a question. She pronounced a judgment. Olivia had seen this decided opinion behavior before. She was done thinking about it, and she had decided the way it was going to be, and she was usually right. Okay. It's still not wrong for me to imagine and think about things." "Imagining and asking him about his time is one thing. Imagining yourself and his time with him, that's an entirely different thing, and you know it." She pointed her finger. "It's dreaming, and dreaming about things you can't have is dangerous." "Only if it can't come true." Grams placed a couple of Christmas-decorated paper plates on the counter. Olivia cut the cheesecake. Grams ran a K-cup of tea through the machine. She placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Trust me, honey. If I was your age, I'd have the same questions. I haven't seen such a man in a very, very long time." She gave Olivia a wicked grin. They went back to the fire. Grams was right, of course. It was dangerous to think of going back there with him. Riding in an open carriage under the stars on a cool fall night. Dancing with him in a crimson dress. What would he think of the 2 new outfits she had commissioned? An authentic mantua in indigo with a pale apple green petticoat. Created by Ingram's, it cost a pretty penny, but she wanted to look the part for the Christmas open town. The deep chocolate brown riding habit was pure indulgence. She had no place to wear it yet, but she couldn't resist the color or the sale price. Perhaps they would dance at the Christmas open town. He could wear his real clothes, and she could wear her new mantua. Olivia pulled her brain, if not her heart, out of dangerous ground. Grams was right. He had to go back, and she had to stay here. "Have you figured out what we need to do?" "I think he needs to pray for forgiveness if he hasn't already. And then he needs to demonstrate he's learned the lesson." "What do we know what the lesson is?" "Compassion, empathy, and the opposite of arrogance." "Humility?" "Yep." "Have you ever thought about going back in time?" "Of course." "Not then, though. No anesthesia. It would make my job horrible." "You wouldn't have your job.
There were still bleeding people back then, Gramps continued as if she hadn't heard. I could never let anyone put a leech on me or cut me open to let me bleed because I had pneumonia. It happened to George Washington. They bled him. It must have been his time anyway. Probably. The bleeding didn't help. Graham stood. The energy of her argument propelled her to the kitchen with the dishes. Olivia followed. It doesn't matter. We can't go back in time with Max. Grams looked up from the dishwasher. No, we can't. I invited him to go with us in the morning. I assume he agreed? Yep, so we'll have to pick him up. Well then, I'm off to bed. We can discuss this further with him tomorrow afternoon. Olivia stood in front of the long mirror on the back of her door. She had no illusions. The only thing she had going for her was the fact that she had not gotten fat. Flat stomach? Yep. Thin hair? Yep. Thin lips? Yep. Hawk-like nose? Yep. Large, round eyes instead of sexy almond-shaped eyes? Yep. Too nerdy for classmates to get her sense of humor? Yep. Walk with a limp forever? Yep. And yet, Max wanted to dance with her in a crimson dress. Of course, she was the only person he knew in this century. If he got to stay here, that would change, quicker than she could fathom. Of course, he had told Honey what she could do with her proposition, in the name of friendship. Technically, he could be in love with someone else and still be her friend. Technically. That didn't mean she could be his. She flopped down on her bed, eyes to the off-white swirls of the ceiling. He would go back to 1769, and none of this would matter anyway. She might as well enjoy his company and friendship while she could. Surely, no harm would come to her by being his friend. In the morning, they chose the SUV. Grams rode shotgun. Olivia pulled up in front of the Ballard house. Max waited, Bible in hand. I was hoping we'd be early enough to see the conservatory, Grams said softly. Good morning, Olivia offered as Max took a seat in the back. Large wagon. We thought it would be more comfortable. Aye, 'tis. Max laid his Bible in the seat next to him. Plenty of room to spread out. I like a large carriage. Takes big horseflesh, though. This is more convenient. Olivia grinned, glad she'd been able to please him. We have to go back over the bridge. Where is this church? Cornerstone Church, not far from Gloucester Point. So you're a pair of dissenters? Grams bristled in her seat. The Church of England is no longer the Church of the Colony or state now, Olivia offered. Well, that's a blessing. Olivia glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Max picked up his Bible once more and placed it in his lap. The more I read, the more I wonder at any faction thinking they have all the answers. I agree, Grams turned. We fellowship here because it's the only one Olivia and I have found that agrees with most of what we understand. What don't you agree with? They think Jesus only drank grape juice. Max released a chuckle. Olivia found a parking place in the small lot. After church, we usually go for brunch. Would you care to join us today? Grams offered as she extracted herself from the seatbelt. Max beat her to the door and handed her down. I would be delighted, ma'am. Olivia hopped out before Max could arrive at her door. He offered his arm to Grams. Garrett waved from the usual pew and stepped out into the aisle. Max handed Grams into the long bench first, then stepped in to take a seat next to her. Olivia slipped in next to Max, and Garrett sat next to her. Olivia felt Max stiffen before taking a glance around her to Garrett. Pastor Tim bustled to the front to make his good mornings. Olivia placed her hand on Max's arm before he could stand, causing a swirl of tingles winding their way through areas she wasn't supposed to acknowledge in church. She found herself more distracted when it was time to sing. An unaccountable shortage of hymnals in front of them required her to share with Garrett. It was embarrassing to be jealous of her grandmother for having the chance to share a hymnal with Max. Max kept his eyes on the pastor as he gave the sermon. On what? Olivia would have to ask Grams later. They sang another hymn, and then they could leave. Olivia sent a prayer asking for forgiveness for her distraction as she followed Max and Grams down the aisle to the parking lot. Garrett, barely a pace behind, whispered, Who is that guy? He's the man I'm going to marry. Max, with Grams in tow, waited for them on the asphalt. Garrett slipped a step or two faster and reached them just before Olivia. Max. Max stuck out his hand. Garrett stood a fraction taller and shook his hand. Garrett. Olivia walked between the tension of the two men. She had not seen Garrett behave this way before. Of course, for years, Grams insinuated that she should marry Garrett. She seemed to believe that one day, Olivia would wake up and see what had been there all along. That she was in love with Garrett, and he with her. This was the first time she had ever seen any evidence that Graham might be right about Garrett. Olivia, on the other hand, had never been further away from Garrett in that far from likely eventuality. Max, Garrett is an old friend from school. Olivia turned to Garrett. This is our new friend Max, from Yorktown. Max arranged himself to stand between Grams and Olivia. Garrett turned his gaze to Grams. Same place? Yes, Grams replied before Olivia could respond. I'll follow you. Max handed Grams back into the truck while Olivia gained her seat behind the wheel. The topic of the sermon had been thankfulness. Grams and Max discussed thankfulness all the way to the pub. Grams sat next to Olivia, leaving Max and Garrett across from them at the table. She couldn't help but compare the two. The latter, a longtime friend, had seen her through the tough time of her accident, not to mention college and grad school. But next to Max, he was too thin, like he had not filled out to manhood. A boy sitting next to a powerful man, though they couldn't be too far apart in age. What you having, hun? Startled, Olivia looked down at her menu, getting a wink from Max as she glanced down. Had he guessed her thoughts, or was he just teasing?
So, Max, what kind of work do you do? Garrett's question sounded like Torquemada rubbing his hands before a particularly interesting inquisition.
I'm a musician. Where do you play? Here and there. I'm new to this area. He sent another wink to Olivia. What's your instrument? Violin, pianoforte, although I'll give any instrument a try. Is that how you and Olivia met? No, we met at Ballard House in Yorktown. Olivia's temper flared. Why would you think we met at work? Did he think Max had a screw loose or something? Well, you're a music therapist. I just thought it made sense. We met at Ballard House, as Max said. She turned towards Max. Garrett is a computer scientist. When Max looked puzzled, she added, he builds the little gadgets that make the world as we know it run. It sure beats the family business. What's the family business? Mortuary, Garrett shivered. Undertakers? Yes. Been in my family for generations. It's not for me. Garrett kept his gaze down at his coffee. Guilt squeezed Olivia's midsection. She had wanted the inquisition of Max to stop, but she had not meant to embarrass Garrett. My family are merchants. They own a string of stores in Norfolk, Williamsburg, Richmond. They all wanted me to join them, open up another shop in Fredericksburg, extend our reach. Olivia quieted. There was so much she didn't know about Max. You didn't want to? She asked. No, I wanted to compose, perform my songs. Garrett stopped swirling spilled sugar crystals on the table. How did you get your way out of it? I didn't. I figured out a way to help them and compose too. I was getting ready to move to Fredericksburg when... Biscuits and gravy? A plate clattered in front of Grams. Once they had been served, Grams blessed the food. So how did Fredericksburg go? Garrett scooped a pile of hash browns into his mouth. Maybe you could help your family with their computer systems. Olivia and Garrett had gone over this many times before, but this was the first time she saw a clear way forward. Garrett turned thoughtful eyes to her. Maybe. My dad would see right through it, though. Probably, but it seems like a good compromise to me. Then you could see them once in a while. Are you estranged from your family? Max asked. Not estranged, but I haven't seen them in a while. You only have one life and one set of parents. Cherish them while they are here. Trust me, you'll miss them when they're gone. Olivia couldn't stop the mist from pooling in her eyes. Max, intent on Garrett, gave her only a profile. Grams moved a little closer. They didn't linger over coffee and the sermon, as been their custom. Clever Grams picked up the bill for everyone, most likely to cover Max's lack of proper funds. One could hardly gainsay the matriarch. Max followed Garrett's lead in a gracious thank you. Garrett escorted Grams to the vehicle, which left Max for Olivia. He offered his arm, and she took it. That was very kind of you. I wish someone had mentored me sooner. There were a lot of hard feelings before we came up with a compromise. Did it take a long time to see the solution? No, just a knock on ahead from my dear mama. And I suspect if Garrett comes up with a reasonable compromise, he'll find his mama ready to knock a head or two so she can keep her family together.
I thought we could drop Grams off first and then I'll bring you home.
I thought we could bring me to see the conservatory. Graham's ears, like a hound dog's nose, didn't miss a whisper. Max grinned. I don't see why not. Unless it isn't there. If it's not, then it solves my problem.
Chapter 5. He was glued to the glass as they reached the pinnacle of the Coleman Bridge. One day soon, he would take a walk and examine the construction. As a boy, he and Sam and Jabaz had paddled up and down across the York. To see it spanned by one bridge was nothing short of magnificent. There's a lot to take in. Olivia parked in the near empty lot. Don't worry about seeing it all. After applying entrance stickers to their shirts, Olivia led Max down the hall to the first exhibit in the Revolutionary War Museum. On the wall on the left were copies of daguerreotypes, enlarged to show men and one woman who had participated in the War for Independence. What is this? Early photos of your contemporaries. They stood in front of each one and read their short biographies. Max came to rest in front of Jabaz Jones. Fought at No. 10 Redoubt under Alexander Hamilton. Voices from childhood echoed in his mind. This way! Moonlight glinted off the grinning Jabaz's teeth as he led them around Widow Gibbons' fence towards the shoreline. Max lifted his hand, fingers poised, but stopped short of touching the photo. He pinched the mist, clouding his vision. Olivia threaded her arm through his, hand resting gently on his forearm. He covered her hand with a small squeeze. We grew up together. With her free hand, Olivia pointed to her device and it clicked. There were so many things to learn here. I still want one of those. She smiled. There's time. He had no idea how much time he did have, but he let it go. Max stopped at each exhibit and read each placard. The layout was a bit confusing. It appeared to circle around upon itself, and if that wasn't enough, the technology was bewildering. Olivia had explained that much of what he saw was due to electricity, but nothing in Franklin's book on the subject prepared him for this. He doubted even Franklin could have seen it. The ladies of his acquaintance would call it devilry. Poor selection. He pointed to the display of the merchant store. I carry much more than that and can order more besides. After an hour, Olivia sought a bench to ease her ankle. After another 2 hours, Max was done. He sat next to her. The timeline is fascinating. He swung his head around. The rest is just fragments. So it is with histories. We see through a glass darkly. I think I shall get more out of the books you brought me than I can here. For details, that's true. But for an overall view, I think it's well done. At least I know it's not witchery. Nope, just electricity. I am acquainted with more than one lady that would hand the curators of this establishment over to the bishop. She giggled at that, a light sound that floated above the din in the museum like a butterfly, hovering over bright flowers on a summer day. Her smile disappeared abruptly. You must be hungry. He had to agree he was, but he would much prefer to hear her laughter again. Would you like to go out, or would you like to go home and I'll cook something? Let's go out. Are you sure? Should we invite your grandmother? She isn't home. Tonight is the monthly meeting with her retired colleagues. They're having a Christmas party. They walked into the twilight arm in arm. He handed her into her car. It was a bit awkward, but it was the best he could do given the circumstances. If he had had his curricle, he would have driven them. Apparently, it takes months to learn to drive one of these things. It didn't look more complicated than driving coach and four, and he could do that and court a lovely lady at the same time. The Yorktown pub recalled the Swan on a snowy night. Several men and women clustered around the bar. Tables ringed the room for diners. They were shown a table in front of an 18-light window overlooking the street. Once seated, Olivia excused herself. She was stopped by a friend on her way to the back of the room. The woman made eye contact with him and sauntered over before he realized her intent. Blonde hair glinted in the multicolored lights of the window. She took a slow sip from a stick in her drink, used it to make her pointed mouth pucker in a way she thought was alluring. "Who might you be?" She dipped a little closer so that he might see her advantages. "I be a friend of Miss Olivia's, come to stay a while."
"If you ever tire of that nerdy gimp, give me a call."
She handed him her card. "You misunderstand. Olivia is my friend. I only tire of people of no consequence." He tore her card and returned it to her. She turned on her heel and shoulder-bumped Olivia on her way back to the bar. "What was that about?" "That person is not your friend. Honey and I grew up on the same street. We have words for such brazen behavior, and none of them are good. We have words, too, although the sentiment behind them appears to be fading." She arranged some packets in a little bowl. "You must think it scandalous for me to spend so much time with you unchaperoned." "The thought crossed my mind, but my situation is so unusual I have to make allowances. It is clear that the rules here are very different. I've read books that indicate men and women were never allowed to be alone." "It's a bit of an exaggeration. We could go to a party together in an open carriage." A playful grin lit her eyes. "And just where would we go in this open carriage?" "Okay, hon, what you like?" A woman dressed in black pants, button-down black shirt, and a tiny black apron appeared tableside with pencil and a pad. Olivia ordered something called a hamburger and fries. He had been going to order the oysters because he knew what they were, but "I'll have the same" was out of his mouth before he could recall it. Their waitress left after Olivia answered all the questions to the woman's satisfaction. Raised eyebrows answered him across the table. "I don't know how long I've got, so I think I should try everything I can." "Makes sense, but you still didn't tell me where we would go in that open carriage of yours." "To the assembly rooms at the Sign of the Crown, or perhaps the Raleigh. It's only 12 miles. And you would wear your breeches and navy blue coat? And you a gown of crimson silk. I'd like that much better than my docent costume. Do you dance?" Her face gained a rosy hue. "A little." "That was clumsy of me. I do apologize. Of course, you are hindered by your ankle, are you not?" "A little." Her face opened in an honest smile. "If I have enough support in a boot, I can manage a dance or two." "Speaking of dancing, can you tell me where the musicians are hidden? Every place we've been to today, there has been music, and yet I see no instruments or men playing them. It's radio." "Radio?" "Sounds are recorded and then sent over radio waves to devices designed to receive the signals." He supposed if he were to write the sentence down and ponder it for some time, he might understand what she meant. As it was, there was too much to distract him, not the least of which was a pair of lapis blue eyes talking of dancing with him in a crimson gown. "After supper, let's run by the library." The waitress returned with 2 platters, loaded with strips of potatoes and a large beef sandwich on a type of bread he had never seen. His stomach clenched when the delicious smell hit his nose. After the blessing, he picked up the large hamburger, as she had called it, and took a bite. "What do you think?" The sauces blended with the beef and bread. He finished in 4 bites. "I don't think I've ever tasted anything like it, or as good before." The melodic sound of her laughter finished his meal better than any treat from the kitchen could have done. Olivia ate slowly, in the end wrapping up half the food on her plate. They arrived at the library 20 minutes before closing. Olivia headed directly for the children's section. When stopped by his questioning look, she rolled her eyes and said, "Children's books are a good place to start. They explain the rudiments of a thing, and then you can explore the details later. Once you know the questions you want to ask." He couldn't argue with her logic, despite his chagrin as the stack of thin volumes grew. Olivia made quick work of locating books she thought he might find useful. By the time she was done, the stack was a full foot high. "May I?" She stepped aside to let him heft the books, which were definitely taller than a single foot. "May I ask why a woman of obvious means, such as yourself, does not have a servant to help you with such tasks?" She stopped to face him. A light above caught strands of gilded brown hair floating around her face. "Are you asking about slaves?" "Well, not particularly, but if you like." She pushed a button and the back of her car opened. "Slavery was abolished." "Not every servant is a slave." "I understand that. How many do you have?" "None. Not everyone can afford such a thing, and not everyone agrees with the practice." "Where do you stand?" "I can afford it." He watched the tension release her shoulders. She seemed to breathe a little easier. "Tomorrow morning, Grams and I will attend church. You may come if you like." "I would." The drive home was short, but long enough for the decision Olivia had to make. Until Max entered the room in modern clothes, Olivia wasn't sure what she had thought of him. A unique exhibit from a bygone era? Someone to ask questions of and answer questions for? A fascinating person to hang out with? Someone to admire like the hologram of Daniel Morgan at the Revolutionary War Museum? Not because he was real, but because he had lived a life that allowed the freedom she now lived? A living diary of the 18th century. Now, he was a man. A turn-your-belly-to-jelly good-looking man. A man who would never look at her twice. She reconciled herself. He wanted to stay in her time. It wouldn't take long for him to understand the 21st century and blend in. If he had that choice, then his world would expand. Tomorrow at church, the expansion would begin and she would lose him. Why would God send him here and now? That she could not reconcile. It was a miracle for sure, but to what purpose? Olivia would just have to be his friend for as long as it lasted. And that would have to be enough. Chapter 6. Grams stared into the fire in her voluminous plaid flannel nightgown. "How was the party?" Olivia asked. "Not much of one. Shepard was the only one who showed up besides me." Olivia removed her coat and slumped into the opposite chair. "Did you have a nice time?" "Nah, Shepard and I were never really close. She made her excuses and I made mine and I came home." "I'm sorry, Grams." Grams glanced up from the fire. "It's okay. Attendance has been dwindling the past year, and I think we're all worried about retirement. What we would do, would we have any friends?" "Retirement is claiming them?" Graham's eyes slipped back to the fire. "Yep, they found their way." "You'll be sorry to see it end." "Yes, I will, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't." "Did you eat?" "I did. There's some cheesecake in the kitchen if you'd like a piece." "That's something I'd miss." "Why would you miss it?" Olivia turned her back to Graham's all-seeing eyes and made for the closet. "On the way home, I was thinking about Max and how different things are for him here. And that led to thinking about how different it would be for me if I went to his time." "Be careful." Grams made her way to the kitchen. Olivia went the other way around. "What?" A silly giggle bubbled out in spite of her attempts at control. Grams swung around quickly to face her. "He's cursed." Olivia felt the smile drop from her face. "I know that. I think it's only natural to think about it. I mean, who gets to meet someone who's traveled through time? Nobody. That's who. Except us." "Yes. And that means we have a responsibility to help him break the curse and get him back to his own time. What if God allows him to stay here?" "What if he doesn't?" Grams wasn't asking a question. She pronounced a judgment. Olivia had seen this decided opinion behavior before. She was done thinking about it, and she had decided the way it was going to be, and she was usually right. Okay. It's still not wrong for me to imagine and think about things." "Imagining and asking him about his time is one thing. Imagining yourself and his time with him, that's an entirely different thing, and you know it." She pointed her finger. "It's dreaming, and dreaming about things you can't have is dangerous." "Only if it can't come true." Grams placed a couple of Christmas-decorated paper plates on the counter. Olivia cut the cheesecake. Grams ran a K-cup of tea through the machine. She placed a hand on Olivia's shoulder. "Trust me, honey. If I was your age, I'd have the same questions. I haven't seen such a man in a very, very long time." She gave Olivia a wicked grin. They went back to the fire. Grams was right, of course. It was dangerous to think of going back there with him. Riding in an open carriage under the stars on a cool fall night, dancing with him in a crimson dress. What would he think of the 2 new outfits she had commissioned? An authentic mantua in indigo with a pale apple green petticoat. Created by Ingram's, it cost a pretty penny, but she wanted to look the part for the Christmas open town. The deep chocolate brown riding habit was pure indulgence. She had no place to wear it yet, but she couldn't resist the color or the sale price.
Perhaps they would dance at the Christmas open town. He could wear his real clothes, and she could wear her new mantua. Olivia pulled her brain, if not her heart, out of dangerous ground. Grams was right. He had to go back, and she had to stay here.
Have you figured out what we need to do? I think he needs to pray for forgiveness if he hasn't already, and then he needs to demonstrate he's learned the lesson. What do we know what the lesson is? Compassion, empathy, and the opposite of arrogance. Humility? Yep. Have you ever thought about going back in time? Of course. Not then, though. No anesthesia. It would make my job horrible. You wouldn't have your job. There were still bleeding people back then, Grams continued as if she hadn't heard. I could never let anyone put a leech on me or cut me open to let me bleed because I had pneumonia. It happened to George Washington. They bled him. It must have been his time anyway. Probably. The bleeding didn't help. Graham stood. The energy of her argument propelled her to the kitchen with the dishes. Olivia followed. It doesn't matter. We can't go back in time with Max. Grams looked up from the dishwasher. No, we can't. I invited him to go with us in the morning. I assume he agreed? Yep, so we'll have to pick him up. Well then, I'm off to bed. We can discuss this further with him tomorrow afternoon. Olivia stood in front of the long mirror on the back of her door. She had no illusions. The only thing she had going for her was the fact that she had not gotten fat. Flat stomach? Yep. Thin hair? Yep. Thin lips? Yep. Hawk-like nose? Yep. Large, round eyes instead of sexy almond-shaped eyes? Yep. Too nerdy for classmates to get her sense of humor? Yep. Walk with a limp forever? Yep. And yet, Max wanted to dance with her in a crimson dress. Of course, she was the only person he knew in this century. If he got to stay here, that would change, quicker than she could fathom. Of course, he had told Honey what she could do with her proposition, in the name of friendship. Technically, he could be in love with someone else and still be her friend. Technically. That didn't mean she could be his. She flopped down on her bed, eyes to the off-white swirls of the ceiling. He would go back to 1769, and none of this would matter anyway. She might as well enjoy his company and friendship while she could. Surely, no harm would come to her by being his friend. In the morning, they chose the SUV. Grams rode shotgun. Olivia pulled up in front of the Ballard house. Max waited, Bible in hand. I was hoping we'd be early enough to see the conservatory, Grams said softly. Good morning, Olivia offered as Max took a seat in the back. Large wagon. We thought it would be more comfortable. Aye, 'tis. Max laid his Bible in the seat next to him. Plenty of room to spread out. I like a large carriage. Takes big horseflesh, though. This is more convenient. Olivia grinned, glad she'd been able to please him. We have to go back over the bridge. Where is this church? Cornerstone Church, not far from Gloucester Point. So you're a pair of dissenters? Grams bristled in her seat. The Church of England is no longer the Church of the Colony or state now, Olivia offered. Well, that's a blessing. Olivia glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Max picked up his Bible once more and placed it in his lap. The more I read, the more I wonder at any faction thinking they have all the answers. I agree, Grams turned. We fellowship here because it's the only one Olivia and I have found that agrees with most of what we understand. What don't you agree with? They think Jesus only drank grape juice. Max released a chuckle. Olivia found a parking place in the small lot. After church, we usually go for brunch. Would you care to join us today? Grams offered as she extracted herself from the seatbelt. Max beat her to the door and handed her down. I would be delighted, ma'am. Olivia hopped out before Max could arrive at her door. He offered his arm to Grams. Garrett waved from the usual pew and stepped out into the aisle. Max handed Grams into the long bench first, then stepped in to take a seat next to her. Olivia slipped in next to Max, and Garrett sat next to her. Olivia felt Max stiffen before taking a glance around her to Garrett. Pastor Tim bustled to the front to make his good mornings. Olivia placed her hand on Max's arm before he could stand, causing a swirl of tingles winding their way through areas she wasn't supposed to acknowledge in church. She found herself more distracted when it was time to sing. An unaccountable shortage of hymnals in front of them required her to share with Garrett. It was embarrassing to be jealous of her grandmother for having the chance to share a hymnal with Max. Max kept his eyes on the pastor as he gave the sermon. On what? Olivia would have to ask Grams later. They sang another hymn, and then they could leave. Olivia sent a prayer asking for forgiveness for her distraction as she followed Max and Grams down the aisle to the parking lot. Garrett, barely a pace behind, whispered, "Who is that guy?" "He's the man I'm going to marry." Max, with Grams in tow, waited for them on the asphalt. Garrett slipped a step or two faster and reached them just before Olivia. "Max." Max stuck out his hand. Garrett stood a fraction taller and shook his hand. "Garrett." Olivia walked between the tension of the two men. She had not seen Garrett behave this way before. Of course, for years, Grams insinuated that she should marry Garrett. She seemed to believe that one day Olivia would wake up and see what had been there all along. That she was in love with Garrett and he with her. This was the first time she had ever seen any evidence that Graham might be right about Garrett. Olivia, on the other hand, had never been further away from Garrett in that far from likely eventuality. "Max, Garrett is an old friend from school." Olivia turned to Garrett. "This is our new friend Max from Yorktown." Max arranged himself to stand between Grams and Olivia. Garrett turned his gaze to Grams. "Same place?" "Yes," Grams replied before Olivia could respond. "I'll follow you." Max handed Grams back into the truck while Olivia gained her seat behind the wheel. The topic of the sermon had been thankfulness. Grams and Max discussed thankfulness all the way to the pub. Grams sat next to Olivia, leaving Max and Garrett across from them at the table. She couldn't help but compare the two. The latter, a longtime friend, had seen her through the tough time of her accident, not to mention college and grad school. But next to Max, he was too thin, like he had not filled out to manhood. A boy sitting next to a powerful man, though they couldn't be too far apart in age. "What you having, hun?" Startled, Olivia looked down at her menu, getting a wink from Max as she glanced down. Had he guessed her thoughts, or was he just teasing?
"So, Max, what kind of work do you do?" Garrett's question sounded like Torquemada rubbing his hands before a particularly interesting inquisition.
"I'm a musician." "Where do you play?" "Here and there. I'm new to this area." He sent another wink to Olivia. "What's your instrument?" "Violin, pianoforte, although I'll give any instrument a try." "Is that how you and Olivia met?" "No, we met at Ballard House in Yorktown." Olivia's temper flared. "Why would you think we met at work?" Did he think Max had a screw loose or something? "Well, you're a music therapist. I just thought it made sense." "We met at Ballard House, as Max said." She turned towards Max. "Garrett is a computer scientist." When Max looked puzzled, she added, "He builds the little gadgets that make the world as we know it run." "It sure beats the family business." "What's the family business?" "Mortuary," Garrett shivered. "Undertakers?" "Yes. Been in my family for generations. It's not for me." Garrett kept his gaze down at his coffee. Guilt squeezed Olivia's midsection. She had wanted the inquisition of Max to stop, but she had not meant to embarrass Garrett. "My family are merchants. They own a string of stores in Norfolk, Williamsburg, Richmond. They all wanted me to join them, open up another shop in Fredericksburg, extend our reach." Olivia quieted. There was so much she didn't know about Max. "You didn't want to?" she asked. "No, I wanted to compose, perform my songs." Garrett stopped swirling spilled sugar crystals on the table. "How did you get your way out of it?" "I didn't. I figured out a way to help them and compose too. I was getting ready to move to Fredericksburg when—" "Biscuits and gravy?" A plate clattered in front of Grams. Once they had been served, Grams blessed the food. "So how did Fredericksburg go?" Garrett scooped a pile of hash browns into his mouth. "Maybe you could help your family with their computer systems." Olivia and Garrett had gone over this many times before, but this was the first time she saw a clear way forward. Garrett turned thoughtful eyes to her. "Maybe. My dad would see right through it, though." "Probably, but it seems like a good compromise to me. Then you could see them once in a while." "Are you estranged from your family?" Max asked. "Not estranged, but I haven't seen them in a while." "You only have one life and one set of parents. Cherish them while they are here. Trust me,
You'll miss them when they're gone." Olivia couldn't stop the mist from pooling in her eyes. Max, intent on Garrett, gave her only a profile. Grams moved a little closer. They didn't linger over coffee and the sermon, as been their custom. Clever Grams picked up the bill for everyone, most likely to cover Max's lack of proper funds. One could hardly gainsay the matriarch. Max followed Garrett's lead in a gracious thank you. Garrett escorted Grams to the vehicle, which left Max for Olivia. He offered his arm, and she took it. "That was very kind of you. I wish someone had mentored me sooner. There were a lot of hard feelings before we came up with a compromise." "Did it take a long time to see the solution?" "No, just a knock on ahead from my dear mama. And I suspect if Garrett comes up with a reasonable compromise, he'll find his mama ready to knock a head or two so she can keep her family together." "I thought we could drop Grams off first and then I'll bring you home." "I thought we could bring me to see the conservatory." Graham's ears, like a hound dog's nose, didn't miss a whisper. Max grinned. "I don't see why not. Unless it isn't there. If it's not, then it solves my problem." Chapter 7. Grams held Olivia's hand. Max took Olivia's and led them to the outside entrance of the conservatory. There it stood. "I don't see anything," Grams said. "Just follow Max." Max stepped up onto the porch. The women stumbled as if they could not see where they were going. Grams did not let go of Olivia's hand. "That's the weirdest thing I've ever seen." She walked the length of the room, touching things like a small child. "It's real." "It's very real to me, Mom." "I understand that, but it's real." She smiled a broad grin. "What's that?" She pointed to the windows. "The back of my property." He pointed out each dependency and its function. "Where are all the people?" "I don't know. In my time, there were people running back and forth across there all the time." "When was the last time you saw them?" "The day of my curse. I went to the house, but I could not get in. I could but stand outside and look in. I couldn't even see the street as it changed down through the years. It stayed the same. I could only see the people living in the house." "You must have been terribly lonely." Max turned his eyes to the floor. "Yes, ma'am. Olivia seeing me was a miracle." He looked back up. "But the passage of time blurred. It didn't feel like 250 years. "May I sit?" He dusted off the piano bench. "I thought you said there were 3 keys missing." "Yes, C, A, and E." "I only see 2. Max and Olivia arrived at the piano at the same time. "You saw 3 keys missing, didn't you?" "Yes, absolutely I did." Olivia used her most assertive voice. "It looks like you've got your C back." "Well, it looks like you have your answer." Grams looked at them both through her spectacles. "You think he needs to do good deeds to prove he has changed?" "Have you asked for forgiveness?" "I have." "Were all 3 keys still missing this morning when you left?" "I assume so." He ran a hand through his hair, disheveling the hairband he had used to replace the usual ribbon holding it back. "I didn't look at them, but nothing has changed in this room for a couple centuries, so why would I notice?" "Interesting." Graham stood to leave. "I would think that you would notice it precisely for that same reason." "I concede your point, but I didn't notice." Olivia moved to stand next to Max. "Well, the only problem with that is we can't determine exactly what incident caused the key to return." Max slipped her hand into his own. He was grateful that she had slipped a little closer to his side. He had not realized how much he had missed contact with another person. Each time he touched Olivia, he wished to prolong the effect like a beam reaching towards the sun. He couldn't seem to get enough. "Agreed," said Grams, leaning on the outside door. "But I'm thinking it must have been the kindness you showed Garrett." "I did nothing so extraordinary." "You showed kindness to a young man who saw you as his rival." Spoken like his very own mother. What was it with mother wisdom and sons? In this case, other people's sons. He did not need to keep secret his growing interest in Olivia, despite the short amount of time they had known each other. Perhaps his captivity played a role in his feelings. Maybe even a large role, but what did it signify? He had never felt this way about a woman he had ever known. Not in 1769, not ever. And he was certain it would never change. All that remained was to decide what to do about it. "I'm ready to go home." Dr. Rita's look left Olivia no choice. How well she reminded him of his own mother. Olivia slipped her hand from Max. A chill remained in its place. "Shall I come with ye?" "You're welcome to come." She gave him a smile he was beginning to treasure. Deep gray clouds hung over the York River. Constant wind on the bridge buffeted the tall SUV. "Looks like a storm," Graham spoke quietly while scrolling on her phone. "Sleet and freezing rain later tonight." Grams hadn't always hated storms. She and Granddad had used to go watch them from hotels when she had been little. Always adventurous, Graham slowed down a little when he had died 10 years ago. "Don't stay out late." "I won't," she promised, glancing at Max in the rearview mirror. "Perhaps Max should stay with us." Graham shot her a look of censure. "I have everything I need," Max offered. "I survived all this time. I'm sure I'll survive a little bad weather." Grams nodded and centered her gaze outside the window. "See you later." Grams levied the pronouncement to both of them by giving them equal eye time before releasing her seatbelt. Max slid out to help her alight. He took his seat in the front as Grams disappeared into the house. Olivia backed out into the street. Something had changed between them. Small talk failed to form on her tongue. Thin-lipped and quiet, Max kept his gaze outside the window. "Has your grandmother taken a dislike to me?" "No, but she is concerned that I will become over-involved." Max said nothing, so she plowed forward. "If all goes well, you will be heading back to your century, and I will stay here." "I see." He reoriented himself to face her. "What do you think?" "I think that I am a grown woman capable of making my own choices." "There is wisdom in a multitude of counselors." "Are you insinuating I don't know my own mind?" "I'm suggesting that ye grandmother is wise." "As pertains to you or me?" "Both." A tense silence fell between them. Max turned towards the window when they had reached the bridge. "My parents died in an accident on a stormy night. The forecast was nearly the same as tonight's. My father, always fearless in storms, insisted we'd be fine, and we would have been if a drunk driver hadn't hit a patch of ice. Graham's fears for me if I'm out in it." "Are ye not afeard for yourself?" "Not really. I guess I inherited that from my father. When I think about that night, I see 3 things in play. The messy road, my father, and the drunk driver. The decisions made by 3 people. My mom could have stopped him." Max nodded. "Lined up the circumstances in just the wrong way, and my parents died. But if the road was clear and the drunk driver still chose to drive, my parents could have still died. I beat the odds if I stay off the road when it's messy out, and I do that for Grams. But if it was a real emergency, I'd go out anyway." Max wrapped his hand over hers and squeezed briefly. Warmth spread up her arm and strummed the excitement she felt when he was near. "So, we need to come up with some good deeds for you to do, so you can prove your sincerity." "Good deeds? Just how am I supposed to conduct such things? Walk around seeing who needs help and assist them?" He released her hand as she made the turn into Yorktown. "It sounds absurd when you put it that way, but yes. When Garrett was a Boy Scout, he carried a penny around in one of his pockets. When he did a good deed, he moved the penny to the other pocket." "Interesting. Would ye like to come in?" "I think I'd better go on home. I don't wish to worry Grams any more than necessary." He lifted his hand to her lips and placed a kiss. Her heart rolled a staccato beat. "Until tomorrow?" "Yes." She paused. "Of course, I have work during the day, and then there's the weather." "Of course." Damp seeped in when he opened the door. He made a little bow. She longed to open her arms and pull him back in. "Don't worry. I have everything I need, and now I have much to read." He wiggled his crooked brows up and down. Olivia laughed outright. Sleet dotted her windshield as she crossed the Coleman Bridge towards home. Ice sheeted across her driveway. Parking the SUV next to her car in the garage, she thanked God for Graham's wisdom. What she told Max was right. She would go out in an emergency, but she didn't relish driving on icy roads, even if it was an emergency. Monday morning dawned icy, with school and work delays. By Tuesday, the roads cleared and Olivia headed back to work and Yorktown. Day after day, she practiced her music by candlelight. Max listened appreciatively while he read through the books she had gotten from the library. When he had finished a small stack, she returned them and brought him others. When she finished playing, they talked and laughed. They asked questions and answered them as best as they could. The Christmas Open Town was in a week, and it was time she pulled out her favorite piece. Max reclined on the settee with a copy of Jane Grey's The Spirit of the Border. He had offered no criticism of her playing. Why she felt so nervous to bring out her favorite piece, she couldn't fathom. She glanced over her shoulder to make sure he wasn't watching as she placed the worn copy on the stand. A deep breath. He arrived at her shoulder before she reached the second line. "What?" She looked up into his looming face. "Where did you get that?" She fidgeted the papers. "It was found when this area was excavated. No one knows who the composer is, but it's always been my favorite. I thought it would be a good linking piece while people mingle around before the performance starts. Do you like it?" "May I?" Puzzled, she moved down the bench to make room for him. "Of course." He arced his fingers over the keys and closed his eyes. The plaintive tone he drew from the keys moved her to stillness. Her eyes drifted close to feel the peacefulness of the shoreline, the chatter of birds. She opened her eyes at the end of her 2 sheets, but Max played on. The melody, soaring even higher through the clouds, then down past a murky pine wood before coming to an exhausting end on the shore once more. The last notes remained with them, wavering as they faded, lovers disappearing hand in hand into the resonance. His eyes found hers when the last note fell silent. "It's you." Fingertips brushed a stray hair. "I?" His thumb brushed her lip. His eyes strayed down to her mouth. She tilted up to meet him. Cradling her face, he slowly touched her lips with his own. It was gentle, a soft kiss that asked, not took. A kiss that left her heart aching for more, her head in a mist. "Shall I teach you?" The words made it through the fuzziness in her mind, but she didn't know what he meant. She opened her eyes. His tender gaze sent another misty fog through her senses. "Would you like to learn the rest of the song?" "Yes." He left her there on the bench and returned with a sheaf of music. "Here ye are." She pored greedily over the notes. "I'll make a copy and return them to you tomorrow." "'Tis a gift." "For me?" He cradled her face once more. "Just for thee," he said before catching her lips again. He pulled away and tucked her into his strong embrace. She could get very used to this. What would she do when he was gone? Was it hard to live back then? "Back then," he chuckled. "It was yesterday. I grant ye, we didn't have your cold storage box or electric lights, but people loved just as hard. We are not, or were not, so distracted by noise. This is the noisiest place I've ever been. How does one have time for contemplation?" Often she had bemoaned the televisions she encountered in every department store and office. All types of music playing absolutely everywhere she went, whether she liked it or not. What would it be like to have none of those conveniences? Not to know where he was or if he had made it home for dinner. No email. To wait weeks for letters to arrive. On the other hand, how much important email did she get anyway? "Do you mind if I play the piece for the Christmas Open Town?" "What is it called?" "What is a Christmas Open Town? And it's never had a name." "It's a Christmas tradition. The historic houses open for the night, decorated for the holidays." Yorktown decorated for Christmas. Yes. Speaking of which, Friday is a Christmas party at my work. Would you like to come? Are you inviting me to a social engagement? Yes, but it's during the day. I'd be delighted, provided I have the right thing to wear. It's casual. What you already have will do nicely. Well, there'll be dancing. She couldn't help but smile. Maybe. Shall you wear a crimson dress? She giggled. No, it's an informal thing, a simple party for our staff and patients. What is it that you do at this work? She sat up to gauge his response. I'm a music therapist. His face blanked. Music is a powerful medicine. It often helps older people whose minds are no longer the same, whatever the reason, and others who are suffering from anxiety and other ailments. You play music for sick people? She smiled. Yes. Chapter 8. Olivia's hand gently rested in the crook of Max's arm as they walked into the glass and steel building. She smelled of cinnamon and evergreens. She wore a cranberry red knitted dress that clung to her enough to keep him distracted for the rest of the day. He couldn't identify the smell that met them inside. It made him think the place scrubbed clean. Flowers, cut of colored paper, adorned the walls, interspaced with framed photographs of the Yorktown waterfront. At the end of the hallway was a tall half-moon desk. Behind the desk sat a woman, dressed to meet dignitaries. Some things apparently didn't change. Face, heavily made up, didn't disguise the creases at grandmotherly eyes. He couldn't decipher what she had done to her hair. It wasn't a high wig, but the color was not natural, nor was its height. Perched atop was a conical red hat with white fluffy brim. Good afternoon, Dr. Woods. Dr. Woods? She had not told him that. Good afternoon, Janice. This is my friend, Max Ballard. Janice turned those grandmotherly eyes to him. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ballard. Olivia took him by the hand and led him down a long corridor of shiny floors and green walls. Chatter leaked into the hallway as Olivia picked up her pace. They entered a large room full of long white tables. Tables laden with food lined a side wall opposite a bank of tall windows. Decorations from the ceiling sparkled red, green, and silver. In the far corner, a piano set on a wheeled platform. I would like you to meet someone. Olivia took his hand once more and led him to a table near the piano. A frail black man sat staring at a plate of food on the table before him. A woman sat beside him chewing. Hello, Mr. Johnson. A weak smile pulled the man's countenance towards Olivia. Mr. Johnson, I would like to introduce my friend Max. Max also plays the piano. The man kept his face to Olivia. Mr. Johnson, do you like piano music? Max asked. He played for many years. Max inclined his head towards the piano. Mr. Johnson, would you like to play with me? The old man shook his head and remained seated, next to his wife, while Max moved to the piano. Max arced his fingers over the keys and prayed it would be right. He began to play the song that he had not named, but gave to Olivia. He would never play it again without thinking of how right she was in his arms and in his life. She was the gift the Lord had to bring him a long way to find. Soon the man looked up from the floor and with the help of his wife made a shaky step to the bench. Max reached the crescendo of the piece when Mr. Johnson added a few notes in quick succession. Max followed the man's lead as his fingers loosened and a rich melody exploded into the room. Behind them, Mrs. Johnson began to sing in a smoky contralto. Before long, Olivia replaced Max on the bench and the room gathered to sing songs all of them knew. It reminded Max of snowy nights at the Swan with his friends. After a short hour or so, caretakers quietly arrived and took their places next to their charges. In groups of 2s and 3s, patients and caregivers shuffled out of the room slowly, still laughing and reminiscing. Olivia arrived at the empty space beside Max. She led him back the way they had come. He tipped his head at Janice on the way past the half-moon desk. Olivia's fingers intertwined with his own as they entered the twilight of the parking lot. Thanks for coming. I enjoyed meeting Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. I love them. Of course she did. He had rarely met another as generous of spirit and full of kindness as Olivia Woods. Would she have kindness for him if she knew what he had done to Adelaide? If she had any sense, and he knew she did, she would flee from him as fast as her feet would carry her. What must it be like to love someone as long as the Johnsons had? To know that they'd always be there? It was not a question he had entertained often, so set he had been in his music and fighting with his family about business. Now here was such a person, and he daren't tell her what he had done. Olivia parked her car next to the Ballard house. About the dancing. Max wore that boyish grin. Her heart tripped. What dancing? Did you not say that there would be dancing at this party? I said maybe. I don't think I ever have been to a party where there was music and no dancing. I have an idea. Hand in hand, they entered the conservatory. Would you like to dance? We have no one to play for us. She retrieved her phone from her back pocket. I insist that you get me one of those. I will, she grinned. Max, he was at her shoulder in an instant. The E is back. Neither of them spoke. Dread squeezed Olivia's chest. What would happen when the last key returned? Would he disappear in an instant the way he had come? Would they have time to say goodbye? He ran a gentle hand down, stopping at the small of her back. Shall we dance? She placed the phone on the piano and clicked play on Unchained Melody by the Righteous Brothers. Max stood across from her, right arm extended. Olivia stepped into the area of his arms. His right arm enfolded her. We do it differently now. 'Tis a shock. I think you'll like it. She laid her right hand in his left and placed his right hand on her back. He pulled her closer as she began to sway and circle in time with the music. The song ended with his nose nestled next to her ear. He danced her over to the piano. Play it again. She did. The warmth of Max's embrace carried her all the way home. Grams looked up from her knitter when Olivia entered the room. How was the party? Lovely. Max played the piano and Mr. Johnson played with him. Grams stood, pointing a slightly bent forefinger. I warned you to be careful, but you can't tell anybody anything. She spun on her heel and headed towards the kitchen. Olivia followed. Do you want some cheesecake? Olivia sat on a bar stool at the counter. The E is back. He'll be gone soon. I don't want to think about it. That always works. Grams placed a healthy piece of cake in front of Olivia and pulled up a stool across from her. I know what you said, but I can't help it. Grams said nothing. Olivia loaded her fork with cheesecake. Max had a good point. Why would God bring him here to us if we were not supposed to care about him? I didn't say we're not supposed to care about him. Caring about him and falling in love with him is not the same thing. They finished their cake in silence. Do you want to come with me tomorrow to get the Christmas tree? Depends on the weather. They cleared up the few dishes they had dirtied with a snack. I'm glad you're here, Olivia whispered as she hugged Grams before heading off to bed. The next day, Olivia arrived at Ballard House with the SUV. Grams had begged off going out in the light rain. Max met her on the front porch. Would you like to come with me to pick out a Christmas tree? Sure, he grinned. What's a Christmas tree? You have so much to learn, and ye shall teach me, Dr. Woods. Her lungs deflated when he pulled her to his chest and planted a chaste kiss on her cheek. Olivia. Olivia. The sound of her name filtered through his accent on lips so close to hers, nearly buckled her knees, which wasn't doing a bit of good at protecting her heart. Christmas trees were introduced in the mid-1800s. And where does one get one of those Christmas trees? There are places to go where one can cut down a tree, and then there are Christmas tree lots where one can buy already cut trees. We get the already cut kind. I should like to cut my own tree. That does not surprise me, but this year we'll have to get one already cut because I do not know of a place nearby to cut our own. Besides, Grams and I have been going to the same tree lot all my life. Customer loyalty. I like it. Lead on. Max executed an exaggerated bow. The beer tree lot was not much more than a small patch of field carved out on the side of the road. Trees leaned against an old horse fence. Twinkle lights looped between poles in between rows of trees. They're just pine trees. Well, yes. One can get pine trees anywhere in Virginia. Well, if one owns the land. Yes. Next year, I'm cutting my own. Next year. Olivia's heart leapt at the possibility. Would he be here next year? If he was, there was no guarantee that he would still want to steal her kisses from her. She led him through each row to look at each tree before she decided on a Fraser fir slightly taller than 6 feet. Max helped Mr. Beer tie the tree to the top of the truck. Now for the fun part. Olivia grinned as she left the tree lot and steered the truck towards home. What is the fun part? We decorate it. Like the decorations I'm seeing in Yorktown? Exactly like that. We would never waste a candle by putting it in a window. Or food. We never waste food. Right. Of course, the decorations were just for that. I didn't think anyone cares if they were historically accurate as long as they're pretty. And electricity is cheap. His eyes rounded in surprise. Compared to making candles, all the window candles are electric, and that is much cheaper than real candles. Gramps opened the door as they came to a stop in the driveway. Between them, they wrestled the tree into the stand and through the door. Olivia, would you get the decorations? Olivia's eyes widened at the request, but she said nothing. When Olivia left the room, Dr. Rito wagged a bent finger towards him. He followed her to the kitchen. He had known a conversation with Olivia's grandmother was inevitable and necessary. If Olivia's father was still living, Max would have approached him first. Dr. Rita, she put her hand up. What are your intentions with regard to my granddaughter? Honorable ma'am, by that I presume you mean to marry her? You are aware of my predicament. If I am allowed to stay here, I will marry her. If she will have me, I want your promise that you will not take her with you back to your time. Eyes enlarged by her spectacles heightened the appearance of her intellect. I don't think anyone can go back with me, but, regardless, I cannot make such a promise. Of course he can't, Grams. Olivia came to stand at the end of the counter between him and her grandmother. It's my decision to make. Dr. Rita disengaged from the counter. A wobble in her step caused her to reach out to the far wall as she made her way back to the living room and the tree. The protectiveness he felt for Olivia draped over Dr. Rita. Olivia's happiness would include the happiness of this woman. Max would not allow either of them to be harmed. Chapter 9. She followed him as he led them to his conservatory once again. Please sit. Olivia chose a cushion on a wooden settee. Max took her hand and placed himself at an angle towards her. Olivia, a hunger warmed the cool depths of his blue-green eyes. Is there anyone I should be concerned about? Giddy excitement rustled through her belly. I'm not sure I understand. You have already told me ye are not married, and you aren't either. Yes, but anyone courting ye? Joy bubbled and threatened to break out in laughter. She put it away. No, Max, no one is courting me, or even interested in courting me. Garrett? Garrett? Courting me? She rolled her eyes to the ceiling. No, I mean, Gramps has said for years that I should think of him, but he and I are just not like that. That's not what I saw. I saw that too, but trust me, it's the first time. I always thought he fancied himself my brother. Let's chalk it up to that until I have a chance to talk to him. Be gentle. A sorrow ached from the depths of his eyes. Suddenly, Olivia understood. Who was she? Max stood and paced the floor. Olivia waited. Her name is Adelaide. She's 15, or was the night I left. Olivia remained quiet. Sam and I and a couple of others were at the assembly rooms. I had a tankard, but just one. Sam had just been betrothed to the girl he had dreamed of. We teased him. They teased me, holding on to bachelorhood. He crossed his arms and continued walking the carpet. And then she was there. Adelaide, her mother, sisters.
her Aunt Rebecca. It was late in the evening when she passed by. Jabez stopped her by saying that I wished to dance with her. She turned to me, a question in her eyes. Adelaide cannot dance. Her leg was crushed by a wagon wheel when she was a child. They are not the same length any more, her legs. Heat flushed Olivia's cheeks. She always fancied me, you see. She's less than half my age, but her mother's friends with my mother, and I never minded the little crippled child following me about. I began to realize that people were making incorrect assumptions. He dropped his head and inhaled deeply. I looked at her open and trusting face and said, "What interest do I have in a cripple half my age?" Olivia gasped. Sam and Jabez laughed outright. Adelaide turned away. I finished my ale and came here. He sat at the piano. Rebecca was here in minutes. Still cocksure, I played doomy music while she railed. What was her name? Adelaide Cooper. I'm going to see if I can find out what became of her. Can you do that? It depends. There were 2 major fires and much was lost, but I can try. I cannot imagine it will make much of a difference. You are here for a reason. Yes. I've got to go. He came to her then. Hands reached out. Olivia. She stepped back and wrapped her arms around her midsection. I have one question. Do you think to make love to me to make up for Adelaide? One cripple for another? She had not anticipated the shocked hurt pooled in his eyes. If so, you can forget it. She walked out of the conservatory without his help. He grabbed her hand. She stopped and spun to face him. Do you want to know what I think of you? He moved in close enough she could breathe his breath. She placed her hands on his chest to push, but found she didn't have the will. You are the only woman who has ever made me feel this way. His heart beat into her hands. Maybe it is how long I've been alone, but I don't think so. I am 31, not a boy. A memory flashed of Max and Garrett at the pub table. No one would ever confuse you with a boy. I grasped everything I could to fight the assumption that I would marry Adelaide. It was wrong to be cruel, but I was not incorrect in my other assessments. She is, or was, too young for me. About what I said, dearest Olivia, I would love ye if you had no legs at all. She gave him a little smile. You said I was here for a reason. Yes. I do not believe that reason is Adelaide. I am not supposed to go back to marry Adelaide. If I am granted the choice, I will stay with ye. She could barely breathe around the fullness of her heart. She sought his eyes. And if you are not, then I will wait for ye. Olivia met his lips. He kissed her hard, demanding, pleading his heart to hers. She could hear his soul call to her, even if not to God himself. Please. He released her from his embrace and held her hands as he faded away. Olivia grasped for him in the space he had just occupied. She splintered her fingers over the cupboard, searching for the entrance to his conservatory. Gone. Max's head spun. Before he could grasp her, Olivia was gone. Max brought his hands back to his chest. He landed on the piano bench before he knew what happened. Night had fallen, and the staccato of an angry female voice surrounded him. Cold air swirled into the room when Rebecca Stiles opened the door to leave. He surged to his feet. Wait! She turned her head. Where is she? Where is Adelaide? Max took Miss Stiles' arm. Take me to her now. I shall do no such thing. Don't you think you've done enough damage for one night? I cannot undo such damage if I do not speak to the girl. Miss Stiles' eyes rounded. Take me to her at once. She said nothing, but stiffly hurried down the street. Max hung on for fear of being lost in the curse on the street this time. Adelaide was at home. He wants to see Adelaide, Miss Stiles told her sister. Olivia sidestepped into the living room to avoid brushing the walls with her new gown. No wonder Max thought she looked like an ill-fed orphan in her docent costume. The dress fit her snugly everywhere but below the hips, where she was as free as in a nightgown. Well, what do you think? With your hair curled and piled on your head like that? I would have thought you were the time traveler. Sadness swelled in her chest, threatening to push more tears through her eyes. I'm sorry, hon. Grams leaned over her skirts to fold her in an embrace that had comforted her since she was a girl. It's my own fault, Grams. You warned me.
Yes, well, warning me not to fall in love with your grandfather wouldn't have worked either. I mean, they could have, but it would have happened anyway. At least your future wasn't doomed from the outset. Doomed? Grams intoned the word in the deepest voice she could muster, a twinkle lighting in her eyes. Olivia laughed in spite of herself. Yes, doomed. She perched on the edge of her favorite recliner. I just don't know if I will ever find anyone else. Don't borrow tomorrow's problems. You don't know what God has in store for you. It was such a miracle all by itself, I thought. She let her sentence drop. It was too embarrassing to state out loud to her Grams how stupid she had been to think that God would have brought the perfect man for her through time. How she had looked forward to showing Max her new dress. They wouldn't travel by carriage to assembly rooms to dance, but they could have danced in the conservatory. Do you want me to come with you? No, it's supposed to snow later. You don't want to be out in that. You'll come home as soon as you're done. There's no reason for me to stay late. Shall I get a movie? An image of the two of them curled up on the couch, an old movie on the television, and warm tea in their cups flashed through her mind. Something funny? Absolutely. Sounds perfect. Olivia retrieved the basket she had placed her music in to keep with the times and headed out to the Ballard house. Adelaide sat in the parlor, a kerchief to the lower half of her face. Miss Stiles and her sister, Mrs. Cooper, stood arm in arm in the doorway. May I have a minute with Adelaide, Mrs. Cooper? Adelaide nodded towards her mother, and the woman stepped 2 steps into the hall within clear view. Adelaide turned towards him slightly, turning her back to her mother. Adelaide, I've come to apologize. I hope you can forgive me, what I said before. She let her hand fall, bringing the kerchief to her lap. Mirth twinkled in her eyes, and a mischievous grin lit her countenance, before consternation wrinkled her brow. Honestly, Mr. Max, your arrival is most uncalled for. In fact, I hope you've not ruined what you have already done quite by accident. I will not accept your apology. I know not what ye mean, Adelaide. I came to apologize for my cruelty to ye just now. It was wrong of me. Keep your voice down. They'll hear and all will be lost. What is this all about, Adelaide? I've tried everything for the past year to get my mother to think of someone else for me. Tonight, light dawned. You do not want to marry me? You're too old for me, Maxwell Ballard. I could have told ye that. It's not me, it's my mother and yours too. Max agreed. He had heard his fair share of the joining of the two families often enough. Yet he had to be sure. So it won't hurt ye to know that my heart belongs to another? Lord, no. I'm glad of it, Max, as you'll not have mine. Relief surged through him, uncoiling the bindings that constricted his heart for centuries. And who does? Her back straightened, her chin raised slightly. Jabez Jones. He suppressed the grin that threatened the corners of his mouth. Her mother and aunt did not need to believe they had reconciled. Jabez, he's born the same year as me. Ye have always been old, Max. Does he know? Course he does. Why do ye think he called to me? Rage replaced the recent giddiness. It was a purpose? Ye have no idea what ye've done. When he got his hands on Jabez, he would strangle him. He had half the idea to marry her anyway, now that he was home. A catch in his spirit stayed his tongue. Godspeed to ye, Mr. Max. Adelaide raised her kerchief to her mouth and nose once more and shook her head. Adelaide? Mrs. Cooper and Miss Stiles re-entered the room. She will not accept my apology. I hardly blame her. Mrs. Cooper straightened her shoulders. I'm ashamed of you, Maxwell Ballard. I shall write your mother and tell her what's transpired this evening. His mother. Max picked his way carefully back through busy dirt streets to his shop. He retrieved a bolt of crimson silk before taking one final look around. He would miss it, but not enough to stay. The warmth of Olivia's laughter, the feel of her dancing in his arms brought him back to his mission. He didn't know how much time he'd have now he had made his peace with Adelaide. He steered clear of his conservatory when he arrived back home, choosing his library desk instead. The stay in his spirit had given him hope. He desperately wanted to go home to Olivia, but he had one thing to do first. He dipped his pen and poised his hand over the page. Nothing came. How was he going to tell his mother of his travel through time and back again? That he prayed he'd be allowed one more trip to the year 2019 to find his future? At the beginning. It took him all night. When he was done, he sealed the letter and left it on his desk. From his desk drawer, he retrieved his store of gold. He hefted the bolt of crimson silk and entered the conservatory. Once more, he took his place on the bench before his piano and prayed. Chapter 10. Twilight filled the streets of Yorktown. Olivia parked her car in the public lot and walked to the Ballard house. Electric candle flames danced merrily above evergreen boughs in the windows she passed. Docents, dressed for the festivities, passed her cheerily, calling for a Merry Christmas. She could barely breathe around her broken heart. He was gone. She tapped her phone to see his face. "And just what are you thankful for?" The echo of her mother's voice called her back to the street. "I'm thankful to be here on the street in my new dress. I'm thankful Grams is waiting for me at home. I'm thankful we had one dance before he went away. I'm thankful I have his song. 'Tis a gift, just for thee." Tears misted her vision. Garrett looped his arm through hers, steering her clear of the curb. "I thought you were supposed to glide along in a dress like that. I thought you were in Williamsburg tonight. Got switched. Lucky for me. My thoughts exactly." "Listen, Garrett, I wanted to talk to you about Max." "Nothing to talk about. Grams is satisfied that he really cares about you, so I'm good." "You're not?" He stopped to face her, a grin lighting his face. "I love you like my own sister, you know. If my sister was still talking to me and wasn't married to someone completely capable of taking care of her, even still." He scratched his chest. "Anyway, as your brother, it's my job to make sure you don't get hurt." She linked her arms once more with his. "Thanks. I do have one or two questions about this situation, though." "What situation?" "The situation that he is from 1769? Olivia's breath caught. "Grams. I didn't give her much of a choice." Anger stiffened her gait. Olivia pulled her arm from his. "I would have found out anyway. All that talk about curses and other stuff that just didn't add up." The fight deflated before she could think of anything more to say. "He's gone." "Do you think he'll come back?" "I want to believe he will, but it may have already been too long." A docent opened the door of the Ballard house when they arrived. Olivia passed through the parlor to the bedroom beyond. She hung her cloak on a peg on a far wall. She silenced her phone, placed it in her basket, and set the basket on the floor under her cloak. The room would be off limits to guests, so she had no concerns for its security. In the parlor, she placed her music on the piano and ran through some scales to warm up and calm her mind. It wouldn't do to weep during the performance. Before long, guests began to filter in. Olivia played Max's tune. Longing filled her heart as she saw them on that bench, hand in hand. At 7, she rose and introduced herself and the music she would be playing. At 8, she did so again. Garrett, standing behind their guests, waved a quick goodbye. By 9 o'clock, her smile had worn new creases in her face. Guests drifted back out into the street. The docent manning the door had taken his leave when she agreed to lock up. She blew out the candles in the dining room, leaving the electric window decorations to illuminate the room. She leaned against the window overlooking the street. Docents with lanterns and guests meandered past towards Main Street. The house was quiet, the way a modern house could never be, with its whir of mechanical devices constantly working in the background. The wisps of unchained melody reached her ears so faintly, Olivia wasn't sure it wasn't a memory of the one dance she had shared with Max. Someone must be playing their phone outside. She closed her eyes to feel his arms once more as they swayed to the song. "Are ye still mine, Olivia?" Eyes snapped open. Max stood in the doorway of the parlor, holding her phone and wearing that boyish smile that sent her heart tumbling. "Ye promised to get me one of these." "There's time." "Aye." Afterward. Thank you for reading. I hope you enjoyed Max. Those of you familiar with historic Yorktown, Virginia, will undoubtedly recognize my free use of the Ballard House on Nelson Street in historic Yorktown. Captain John Ballard and his wife Elizabeth had 4 sons and 2 daughters. None of them were called Maxwell, but since there were so many, I don't think adding in one more would hurt. especially since he slipped away in time after both his parents were gone. They did live for a time at the house we called the Ballard House. Captain John died in 1745, leaving the house to his widow, Elizabeth. She died in 1756. Their son, John, sold the house and moved to Princess Anne County in 1761, long before the events of this novella. The house at that time was called Pearl Hall, and it was located on Pearl Street. The Ballard property on Lot 54 underwent many changes during the years. The dependencies are gone, and the inside no longer resembles its original configurations. But, as far as I can tell, there was no music conservatory attached to the house in any century. Its construction is entirely my own, suggested by the ballroom at the governor's mansion in nearby Williamsburg. Another note about the Revolutionary War Museum at Yorktown. At the time of this writing, when entering the museum, just past the gift shop, there is a display of daguerreotypes of men and one woman who participated in the War for Independence. Those images were taken in the 1850s. There is no J. Baz Jones. He is absolutely fictitious. Thanks again for listening to Max. If you liked Max, would you consider leaving a review at the retailer of your choice? And please visit me on the web. I'd love to hear what you think. Sign up for my newsletter to hear about new releases and other fun stuff. Website, izzyjamesauthor.com. Facebook, izzyjamesauthor. Instagram, @izzy.james. This has been Max, a Yorktown Christmas time travel novella. Copyright 2019 by Elizabeth C. Hull. Production copyright 2023 by Elizabeth C. Hull.